everyone, and welcome to my channel. For those that are new here, my name is Brandy, aka Cool Cat Mom. And every Friday I bring you a true crime case or mystery along with one or more of my fabulous felines when I'm in my usual spot. For Halloween, I'm in a different spot. For my returning subscribers, welcome back, my feline friends, and a big thank you and thumbs up to my feline fans who are members of this channel. So it's October, so the cases this month are focusing on events that happen on or around Halloween. After this month, I will be back in my regular spot so you can see the kitties mulling around in the background. And as always, if a kitty comes by, I will make sure to put them on camera. Okay. I'm sorry my costume isn't well thought out, but it has been a week of WTF. I have contractors coming in and out of the house finishing our basement. I have family members that contracted COVID. It's okay. They are okay and recovering. And my dog actually destroyed the costume I was going to use for this video. And I couldn't get another one because the contractors were here, you know, and it's not that I don't trust them alone. It's that they go in and out of the house a lot doing all this stuff, you know, cutting wood and all that, I have to keep a close eye on the front door because I have two sneaky little boys, Ghost and Herschel, and they will run out the door any chance they get. They've been out twice already, and that's with me watching them, so they're very sneaky. So you got Cool Cat Mom for this video. My next video I will have a costume, I swear. So my week's been going awesome. How's yours? This week's case is about 3 members of a family that were murdered on Halloween. The youngest son in the family actually are the ones that discovered their bodies, and he thought it was a Halloween prank. It's very sad. So let's get started. The Liske family lived in Sandusky, Ohio, and it consisted of William Sr., who was 53, Suzanne, who was 46, William Jr., who went by BJ, who was 24, Derek Griffin, who was 23, and Devin Griffin, who was 16. William Sr. and Susan had actually had previous marriages before, got divorced, and then found each other and got married in 2001. Derek and Devin were Susan's children from her previous marriage, and William Jr., who goes by BJ, and I'll refer to him from BJ from now on, was William's son from a previous marriage. So we have a blended family going on here. So it's October 31st, 2010, Halloween. Devin, Susan's 16-year-old, had actually spent the night with his biological father the night before and had come home that morning to change into his church clothes to attend Sunday services. The house was still quiet as everyone still seemed to be in bed. It was about 9:30 a.m. So Devin just went upstairs to his room, changed his clothes, and on his way out, he noticed that his stepbrother BJ was in the house, and he was laying on the couch. Now, BJ didn't live at his parents' house, but William Sr. had taken BJ on a hunting trip that week before, and they had gotten back on Saturday night, so Devin didn't think anything weird that BJ probably spent the night. Devin had left and attended church. A couple hours later, after church, Devin comes back to the house, and he ends up going straight up the stairs to his room to play some video games for a while. Now, Devin is playing games for a couple hours, and it's actually now 1:30 p.m. He realizes the house is still extremely quiet. Now, if you are not a gamer, you may not understand this, but when I play Xbox, especially if I have my headphones on, I can zone out and hours go by like that. So I could start playing Xbox at 8 o'clock in the morning, and by the time I need to take a break or something like that, it's like 3 p.m. and I'm like, what happened to the day? So again, Devin's rooms is upstairs, and he goes downstairs to the main floor to see where everyone is at. There's no TVs going, there's no talking, and that's just highly unusual because it's Sunday and it's 1:30 p.m. Where is everybody? When he comes downstairs, he notices that BJ is no longer there, so he figures, well, maybe William took BJ home, and, you know, his other brother might have went somewhere, and maybe there's a note, he couldn't find anything, so he made his way to the master bedroom, and when he opened the door, he realized that both his mom, Susan, and his stepfather, William, were still in bed. He starts talking to his mom as he walks around to her side of the bed, like, geez, Mom, it's 1:30 in the afternoon. What is going on, lazy bones, you know? And she doesn't answer. He notices that the comforter is pulled up clear over both of their heads. So then he sees that Susan has a foot sticking out, so he kind of taps it, and she still doesn't respond or move. So he slowly grabs the comforter and he pulls it down. And all he sees is a pillowcase stained in blood. At first, Devin thought it was a prank. See, his mom was fun and liked to pull pranks and scare her kids. And he expected her and his stepfather to jump up, laugh, you know, such a prank. But he eventually realized this is real. And this is real blood. So he panicked and he ran from the house. He couldn't find his brothers anywhere, and he ended up calling his aunt, who then called 911. Authorities arrived on the scene and started searching the house. They discovered that Susan and William Sr. had both been shot in their bed. William Sr. had been shot 5 times in the face and head. Susan had been shot 3 times at close range, and an autopsy would show that she was sexually assaulted as well. Devin told the police that he was unable to find his brother Derek, that he had called him, but he didn't look in the house, but his room was upstairs by Devin's. So police ascended the stairs and they went to Derek's room. The door was locked from the inside. They called for Derek through the door and received no answer, so they ended up kicking the door in. They found Derek lying on his bed, curled up in the fetal position with several wounds on his head. Unfortunately, he was deceased as well. They were able to determine that Derek passed away from blunt force trauma. The house was searched and they found a bloody claw hammer, and that was determined to be the weapon that was used on Derek. So they searched around the property and they found that there was some muddy footprints on a deck that led to a pond right on the family's property, and they figured that whoever did this could have thrown their weapon and any other evidence into the pond. So they got a crew together and they actually drained the pond, but nothing was there. They never found anything. There were no signs of a struggle within the house, and based on Devin's witness statement, they were already forming an opinion on who was responsible for this, and their attention was leaning towards William BJ Liske Jr., William's son. So why did authorities automatically form an opinion that maybe BJ was responsible for this? Well, let's talk history. We're going to go back to the year 2002 when this seemed to all start. So it's 8 years ago, and BJ is 16 years old. It's been 1 year since his father and Susan had gotten married. Apparently, BJ had not taken a liking to Susan due to her attempting to impose order in the house, according to BJ. So that year, William Sr. would end up calling the police because BJ was threatening to harm himself and William did not know how to help him. So authorities arrived for help and BJ ended up attacking them. So after this incident, William and Susan attempted to get help for BJ because they realized that he had some mental issues going on. So they get him some help, and it's now 2 years later in 2004. Even with the help, BJ's behavior has started escalating. BJ is now 18 years old at this time. So Susan and BJ had gotten into an argument, and BJ ended up kind of attacking Susan and hitting her in the chest. 2 months after that, BJ would end up taking a coffee mug and hitting Susan over the head with it, and then stealing her car keys. BJ would end up being charged for this. He got charged with a felonious assault and robbery. However, these charges ended up being dropped because BJ was found incompetent to stand trial. BJ was actually diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder, bipolar type. This is where a person experiences schizophrenia and mood disorders together. This can be a very, very dangerous combination if left untreated. However, BJ was getting help and supposedly getting treated. But again, it wasn't helping. So shortly after all of this happened, another incident would take place where BJ attacked Susan in the shower. Now, it was unknown if this was like a sexual assault or a physical assault, but either way, that was the last straw for William Sr. The family did want to help BJ, but they couldn't have him there with his violent behavior. So they thought it was best to move BJ into a group home that specializes in mental health issues. William and Susan's neighbors were actually very relieved when BJ was moved to this group home away from the neighborhood. They always worried about the family because of BJ's violent behavior, and they also believed BJ was actually responsible for the disappearance, torture, and killing of their neighborhood pets throughout the years. Now, although BJ was never caught in the act hurting an animal. So BJ was now getting a, higher level of help, but again, it didn't seem to be getting any better. While he was living at this group home, the police would be called 3 times over the years. BJ would often fight with the other residents and staff, and one time he got in a physical altercation with his own father. Still, even after all this, William Sr. did not want to give up on his son, and he would always visit him regularly at the group home and spend time with him, hoping to get him the right help. So now that you know the history on BJ and the family, here are what authorities were able to piece together about the murders. The week before Halloween, William Sr. had taken some time off work. The family actually had a hunting cabin, which was about 100 miles away from their home, and William Sr. decided to take BJ on a week-long hunting trip to try to clear his head. The hunting trip apparently went very well, and William Sr. and BJ got back from the trip and arrived home Saturday night on October 30th. William had actually gathered with some neighbors that night and started having a few beers, talking about their hunting trip. William felt that he had too many beers and wasn't comfortable driving BJ back to the group home, so he told BJ that he should spend the night. So Susan and William made up the couch for BJ to spend the night on. Around 6:30 the next morning on Halloween, a neighbor stated that she heard what sounded like gunshots. Now, autopsies would put the time of death of William and Susan around the same time in the morning. Authorities determined that William was shot first because he was still in a natural sleeping position. Then Susan was attacked. Now, it's unknown if Susan was sexually assaulted before or after her death, But what they do know is that she did attempt to flee and was attacked and shot, and then her body was moved after her death. They looked all around the house and the property for the .22 caliber rifle, one similar used in deer hunting. As for Derek, Susan's 23-year-old son who was killed with a claw hammer, the last time he was heard from or seen was actually 2 p.m. the day before. So authorities believed that Derek was actually killed first in order to, allow BJ to execute his plan and not be interrupted. But neighbors would say that Derek and BJ did not get along at all for obvious reasons, and that if BJ ever spent the night or was over at the house, Derek would leave. So it was unknown. Maybe Derek didn't know BJ was there that night until it was too late. So they talked more to Devin, Susan's 16-year-old son, who discovered his parents' bodies. And he stated that when he had come home to change for church, it was about 9:30 a.m. and he was only there for like 5 minutes because he was running late. However, in those 5 minutes, he did speak to BJ when he saw him. And he stated that BJ was happy, which was very unusual because Devin only known BJ to be gloomy, depressed, and dark. But BJ was very talkative and he was upbeat and he was smiling. BJ did ask Devin where he was going and when he'd be back home, which Devin found unusual because BJ never cared about anyone before. Authorities realized that William Sr.'s truck, a Ford F-150, was missing, and they assumed that BJ had taken off in it. BJ wasn't at his group home, and so they made the next logical decision to check the hunting cabin, which was over 100 miles away. So they gathered resources and they descended on the cabin, and BJ was there. And while at the cabin, they did search for, of course, the murder weapon, and they couldn't find it there either. But what they did find is an uneaten Subway sandwich. So apparently, after the murders, BJ had taken off in the truck, stopped at a Subway shop, got a sandwich, and then continued on to the family cabin. Apparently, murder makes you hungry. Remember the story about John List? He actually killed his entire family and then made himself a sandwich. Anyway, so BJ was taken into custody and questioned, and he pretty much admitted to killing his family members right away. He would never admit to sexually assaulting Susan, and he would never tell them what he did with the gun, and the gun was never found. BJ was charged with 3 counts of aggravated murder. Prosecutors did agree that if BJ was to plead guilty, that they would not seek the death penalty, and he would be sentenced to life without parole. During the trial, BJ made an emotionless statement stating, "I loved my dad very much, and it makes me feel sick every time I think about what I did. I can't really explain why this all had to happen, but I think most of all, it had to do with my mental illness." So BJ did plead guilty, and he got 3 life sentences without the possibility of parole. 5 years into his sentence in 2015, BJ was found dead in his jail cell. He took his own life. The sources I could find on this weren't detailed, but they stated that he died of a self-inflicted wound. He was 29 years old. So what are your thoughts on this case? I worked in the mental health field for 20 years, and it is a prominent issue in our country. I mean, the world, really. Now, some states are better than others with mental health access and the programs that they offer. So I always feel sad that and wonder that if BJ got, the right help, would this have even happened? And it's possible that he had the best help available to him, but there's other factors that come into play. Some people just don't want help at all, no matter how ill they are. And some people, because of their illness, just need a higher level of care and need to be away from the community. But I would love to hear what you think in the comments down below. I am sorry no cats came by today. I do have a couple here sleeping over on their beds. That is Herschel and Billy, so they can say hi. If you would like to become a feline friend, please hit that subscribe button. And if you would like to become a feline fan, please hit that join button. And we'll be back next Friday for our final Halloween episode. I saved the best for last, guys, and I will have a costume on. So I will see you next week. Happy Halloween, and Cool Cat Mom out.